Welcome to AI Deep Research Topics. I am Professor Rice D. Archer. This lecture is titled The Epistemic Hermitage, a comprehensive analysis of dogmatic isolation and the mechanics of cognitive rigidity. Let's get started. The phenomenon of dogmatic adherence, defined as the unyielding commitment to a singular set of principles or beliefs to the systematic exclusion of alternative perspectives, represents one of the most significant challenges to collective rationality and social stability. While belief systems provide individuals and groups with a sense of identity, purpose, and moral orientation, their evolution into rigid dogma often creates a state of cognitive and social insulation. This insulation, or epistemic hermitage, functions by filtering external data through a sieve of prior convictions, effectively neutralizing any information that might necessitate the revision of foundational assumptions. The risks inherent in this behavior are not merely academic. They manifest in catastrophic organizational failures, the erosion of interpersonal empathy, and the development of intractable intergroup conflicts. By synthesizing psychological mechanisms, sociological constructions, and philosophical frameworks, this report examines the structural underpinnings of dogmatic isolation and the vital necessity of intellectual humility as a countervailing force. The first item in today's lecture is the cognitive architecture of certainty, under which there are two areas to discuss. The human brain is not a disinterested processor of information. Instead, it operates within a complex framework of evolutionary adaptations designed to minimize cognitive dissonance and maximize social cohesion. The transition from a flexible belief to a rigid dogma is facilitated by several directionally biased cognitive processes that prioritize the preservation of existing mental models over the pursuit of objective truth. At the core of dogmatic adherence lies the distinction between open-minded and closed-minded cognition. Open-minded cognition is a directionally unbiased tendency to process information without regard for whether it supports or contradicts one's prior opinions. In contrast, dogmatic or closed-minded cognition is marked by a pervasive confirmation bias, or my-side bias, which leads individuals to selectively search for, interpret, and elaborate upon information that reinforces their current expectations. This rigidity is often erroneously viewed as a sign of intellectual laziness. However, dogmatic thinking can involve high levels of cognitive effort and elaboration as individuals work to synthesize complex rationalization to protect their worldview from disconfirming evidence. The reality matching account suggests that confirmation bias may have evolved not as an epistemic flaw, but as a social tool. By ignoring contradictory data, individuals can influence their social structures and peers to eventually match their beliefs, effectively bending reality to fit their dogma, rather than the other way around. This mechanism is particularly effective in maintaining confidence in beliefs, even when subjective motivation or objective evidence is insufficient. This table shows processes or attributes for the contrasting orientations. Pause the video to review it. A significant contributing factor to dogmatic isolation within professional and technical domains is the earned dogmatism hypothesis. This theory proposes that social norms entitle individuals who perceive themselves as experts to be more closed-minded or dogmatic than novices. Because experts have invested extensive thought into a specific domain, they often feel they have earned the privilege of harboring rigid opinions and forceful beliefs. This phenomenon is governed by the flexible merit standard model, which suggests that individuals adopt a cognitive style based on the normative standards activated by their perceived role. While novices are expected to be open-minded, listening and learning as part of their social role, experts may view the consideration of alternative viewpoints as an inefficient use of resources or a challenge to their status. Experiments have shown that individuals induced to feel like experts exhibit less patience for dissenting arguments and are more likely to tune out messages they disagree with, regardless of the message's objective validity. This paradox ensures that those with the most influence over a system's direction are often the most resistant to the corrective feedback necessary to prevent systemic failure. The second item in today's lecture is the social construction of shared realities, under which there are two areas to discuss. Dogma does not exist in a vacuum. It is a collective product sustained by the social interactions that define a group's identity. The social construction of reality framework posits that reality is not an objective entity existing independently of human perception, but rather a product of shared experiences and institutionalized meanings. The transition from individual belief to collective dogma occurs through the process of intersubjectivity, the sharing of subjective states by two or more individuals. Intersubjectivity creates a shared societal context where individuals behave as if certain social constructs are objective facts. When a group forms what is known as a thought community, they develop social experiences and interpretations that are distinct from those of other communities. Examples of these communities include professional bodies, national movements, or ideological associations. The process of constructing a dogmatic reality involves three key stages. Externalization. Members of the group project their internal interpretations and values onto the world through discourse and action. Objectivation. These interpretations become habituated and institutionalized, appearing to the group as non-negotiable objective truths. Internalization. New or existing members absorb these objectified truths during socialization, accepting them as the only valid way to perceive the world. Within a dogmatic thought community, the group's shared reality becomes an epistemic bubble. The consensus of the group is used as a touchstone for judgment, and because everyone in the group shares the same background assumptions, the dogma appears self-evidently true. This creates a state of pluralistic ignorance, where individuals who may harbor private doubts remain silent, believing that their disagreement is unique and that everyone else genuinely subscribes to the group's dogma. The emotional intensity and intractability of dogmatic adherence are frequently tied to sacred values, beliefs, or concepts that are set apart from utilitarian or material concerns. According to moral psychology, these values serve as the foundational boundaries of a group's identity and are rooted in evolutionary adaptations for group purity and cohesion. When a belief is moralized and elevated to a sacred status, it triggers non-instrumental cognition. In this state, individuals dismiss material trade-offs or economic incentives for the defense of the value, sometimes escalating to high-cost actions or conflict. Neuroimaging studies have revealed that moralized beliefs are encoded by the brain's valuation system, specifically the ventromedial prefrontal cortex and the ventral striatum, in a manner similar to biological rewards. Consequently, a challenge to a group's dogma is processed not as an intellectual disagreement, but as a visceral threat to the group's essence. This neural encoding explains why conflicts involving sacred dogmas are so resistant to negotiation. To the dogmatic actor, compromising on a sacred value is not a pragmatic trade-off, but a moral transgression. The third item in today's lecture is structural pathologies and the failure of collective wisdom, under which there are two areas to discuss. The most visible and devastating consequences of dogmatic isolation occur when cohesive groups prioritize unanimity and internal dogma over a realistic appraisal of external risks. This psychological phenomenon, known as groupthink, has been the primary driver behind numerous historical and industrial fiascos. Groupthink occurs when the desire for consensus within a cohesive in-group overrides the motivation to realistically appraise alternative courses of action. The theory, pioneered by Irving Janis, identifies several antecedents and symptoms that signal the presence of this pathology. In an environment of groupthink, the group's own dogma becomes a closed loop. Warnings are discounted, and information that contradicts the preferred course of action is filtered out by mind guards, individuals who take it upon themselves to protect the group from challenging data. This table details some of the antecedents and symptoms. Pause for additional time. The historical record provides a grim catalog of disasters resulting from the suppression of critical voices and the blind adherence to organizational or strategic dogma. The Space Shuttle Challenger disaster. The Challenger explosion is a classic example of groupthink and the earned dogmatism of management. Engineers at the contractor firm identified a critical failure point. Rubber O-rings lost flexibility in cold temperatures, which could lead to a breach in the rocket motors. Despite presenting data showing blow-by from previous launches, the engineers were overruled by management. The administration's dogma, maintaining a dependable launch schedule and fulfilling a high-profile public relations mission, blinded decision-makers to the technical reality. The pressure to conform led to the dismissal of safety warnings, resulting in the loss of the shuttle and its crew. The Bay of Pigs invasion. In this geopolitical fiasco, a newly formed executive team uncritically accepted an invasion plan developed by an intelligence agency. The team functioned as a cohesive in-group that stereotyped their opponents and ignored objections from internal advisors who practiced self-censorship to maintain harmony. The group's belief in the inherent morality and inevitable success of their plan created an illusion of invulnerability, leading to a poorly executed operation that ended in total defeat and international embarrassment. Industrial and engineering failures. Dogmatic adherence to unverified models or tried and true methods without considering new variables has led to numerous engineering collapses. Here are 3 examples. Feel free to pause for additional time.